Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another sports extravaganza. I'm Mike Pinto, along with my brother and co-host, Anthony Pinto. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
All right, another socially distanced crowd roaring in the background, Mike. And that opening graphic with this is the season for March Madness, but the Knicks are creating a little bit of madness of their own in March. The team is doing great as far as the Knicks fans are concerned, and there's a lot of excitement in the air.
Excitement, you hit it right on the head. It's so gratifying to see a town that deserves great Knick play, or just representative Knick play, and etc., because the passion is there. And you're going to introduce our special guest, no one with more passion for the Knicks. So, Anthony?
Well, our NBA insider happens to be none other than my son, Gregg Pinto. And he is about the most passionate Knicks fan that I know. And I'm not being biased when I say that.
Gregg, welcome.
Thank you, guys. It's great to see you. Great to be here, and great to finally be here with something positive to discuss.
We were saying that off camera that, usually, we do this and say, yeah, there's some promise. But this time we could genuinely talk about this as a team that's building and is, kind of on the rise.
Things are looking up, that's for sure.
In fact, I want to open this up, Greg. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I want to open it up with just citing a New York Post dated very recently, March 5th, an article by Steve Serby, and the headline is, "The Knicks are finally a team to be proud of." How sweet is that?
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, that's for sure. And I am proud of this team. A team that comes out of nowhere is a really special thing in sports. So pride is one feeling I definitely have about them.
Gregg, I was watching the game last night, knowing that we were going to be together today. It was beautiful to see when a defensive steal at the end to seal a victory, a very hard-fought game. But the thing that struck me was the camaraderie, the way they gathered at half court to celebrate. It was beautiful to see. The passion.
Yeah, this team has a real nice spirit about them. They get along. They seem to want to play for each other. And it's something that's really been lacking for a long time. Even in the mellow years, I don't think we had anything that was like this.
Well, Greg, let's start at the guy that we think deserves the most credit, and that's the head coach. Tom Thibodeau has really exceeded expectations here. And I just read a little bit about his core beliefs, and it's really very simple. He says, play hard, play smart, and play together. And what I want to ask you as the opening question, a lot of coaches have espoused that same thing, play defense, play hard, work together. But he's got these guys to buy in. What's the difference?
Well, I think knowing Tibbs, I think it's more than just those. Those may be his core beliefs, but the guy's a basketball junkie. He's got no wife. He's got no kids. This is what he does. And so he's pretty deep into the X's and O's. But I also think he walks in that room and he has a lot of credibility because of how much success he's had in the league. And guys buy in. And one thing that I think we all underrated, myself included, is that having this young roster full of guys that are fresh out of college, and most of them went to big-time college programs, it's a very coachable roster. You think a guy like R.J. Barrett, he went to college and played under Coach K. You don't think he knows how to be coached? Julius Randle has never had a coach that's this good in the NBA. You look at the list of coaches that he's played for; it's a graveyard. So I think that all these Kentucky guys, they're used to playing under Coach Cal. They certainly have no problem being coached. So I think it helps to get buy-in from guys that are willing to accept being coached. There's not a lot of angry, surly vets that would reject or revolt against this. And the one guy that we all figured would revolt was Julius Randle, and he's been a revelation.
The star of the team. But Greg, second in the NBA in defense. That's not easy to achieve. I know it's music to my co-host's ears. How do you account for that?
You know, I think it starts with the fact that they built the team with 2 rim protectors. So Mitchell Robinson, who's been out, but also Nerlens Noel. There's a lot of teams in the league that don't even have one. And if they have one, half the game they're playing without that guy on the floor and they just go small. And we're one of the few teams that always has a big guy out there to protect the rim. And the defense really seems to steer guys into that, right? And so they fight off, they run guys off the 3-point line, try not to give up too many threes, although it seems like they give up a lot. But for some reason, opponents aren't hitting them with the frequency that they should. And I think it's because they play tough. You know, you hear Tibbs say this one phrase, you heard him say it a lot in the beginning of the year, which is that good defense requires multiple efforts. And if you watch them play defense, that's what you see. You see a guy charge hard on a closeout and the offensive player kicks the ball to somewhere else. All of a sudden, the guy who just closed out is jetting across the floor to go close out on somebody else.
Be more than one guy.
And these guys, Mitchell Robinson and Nerlens Noel, go from protecting the paint to going and running off somebody off the 3-point line if they have to. So, you know, it's really been incredible.
You know,
Hey,
Greg,
Greg, so
further that point, when you're saying that it's what Tibbs was saying, that it's multi-leveled, it's 100%. It's a great point, because when you think about it, it also extends to the offensive side of the court. Even though one would say, what does that have to do with defense? It has everything to do with defense. The way you balance the floor offensively, the shots that you take offensively, how many times, and maybe Knicks fans didn't even notice it over these barren years, how many run out points going the other way, fast breaks going the other way. I watched the game last night. I watched the game against the Nets. You don't see run out points there. It's not only a discipline on the defensive side of the ball, but even offensively, they get back. They get back on defense. They transition very, very well. There's a lot of discipline, and that doesn't happen by accident, as you just said.
They're allowing the fewest points in the league. You can't argue with that.
You can't argue with that. Greg, I wanted to go back to what you had started to say about Julius Randle. The guy has been phenomenal, not only on the court, but also off the court. He's definitely the leader of the team. His teammates love him, and he's really thrived under Thibs. Lately, I've been seeing like Larry Bird comparisons. What's different about him this year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's Larry Bird, but you know, statistically, he's putting up these stats that seem
right.
Almost
that's what they were
unreachable.
comparing to Bird with his triple doubles.
But even, you know, beyond the stats, I think if any Knicks fan hasn't read that that piece that he wrote for the Players Tribune, go find it and read it, because it's something that he wrote himself, and it's from the heart. And you can just tell this is a guy, we don't see this in New York, a guy who signed a free agent contract and came in and did not perform. And he actually took the time to reflect on his season and how he failed as a leader and as a player. And in one offseason, albeit an extended offseason because the Knicks weren't in the bubble and it was a shortened season, but in one offseason, he corrected so many flaws that he had, and he's playing for his teammates. I can't remember the last time the Knicks had a player, a focal point of their offense that actually made guys better. For all those years that we lived with Carmelo, and I was a big Melo supporter, but he was never getting 17 assists in a game. And Julius really doesn't seem to have a selfish bone in his body, and it's a far cry from what we saw last year.
And Greg, so speaking of that, one guy that he has worked very well with is RJ Barrett. They seem to work well together. I know you're a big believer in him. Again, tremendous improvement from year one to year two. I love the statement that I read. I pride myself on being a guy that the team can count on. And that pretty much says it all. What's been the difference in him?
You know, he's a hard worker. He's a really good kid. He's like just a good quality kid. And he was kind of built for this. He was the #1 high school recruit in the same class that Zion was in. He went to Duke with Zion and, was overshadowed by Zion, but still managed to average 22 points a game. And he wasn't great last year, but he was 19. And this year he's 20. And guys, as we sit here today, he has played less than 100 games in his career. So because he had an injury for a little bit of time last year and then the shortened season. So he barely has any experience. I think he's just scratching the surface. And he's got this sort of like this athleticism that is a little bit like underrated. Usually we look at guys that are flying around the floor, like that are at top speed. And Barrett has the opposite. He can slow down and hesitate and sort of like snake dribble his way to the basket and keep defenders on a string, keep defenders behind him. He just sort of knows how to use his body.
And also, Greg, I think he's playing with much more confidence. And I want to lead into something, because let's talk about two first and second draft choices from this prior year. Now, Obi Toppin, he looks lost out there. He doesn't have confidence. He doesn't, he's not in the flow of the offense. Luckily, our second pick, IQ, Emmanuel Quickly, is learning very quickly. So give us your assessment of those two gentlemen.
Yeah, it's funny. For one of them, I'm going to say it's too early. And for the other one, I'm going to be pumped that he's doing it so early. So it's, I guess beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think with Obi, he has not looked good. But at the same time, he's in limited minutes. He's playing behind Julius Randle. And it's kind of a luxury at this point, right? He doesn't have to be the focal point of the team because he's able to play behind a veteran and learn the game. I am a little concerned, but it's early. He is a rookie. And he had no training camp, no summer league. Unlike what IQ has is a skill that translates immediately, right? He could shoot. He can shoot as soon as they turn the lights on in the gym. And he shot, even in college, he was shooting 90% from the line and almost 40% from three. And that's carried over to the NBA. I think what we've seen from Quickly that I didn't expect is that he can really create off the dribble. He can create his own threes. He can sort of put on a couple of moves. He's got a decent handle for a young guy and get his shot. So I have a lot of faith that Quickly is really going to be a big time player in the league. And Obi,
you're right.
Look, man, NBA draft picks can be busts sometimes. I mean, we've had a whole bunch of them in the last handful of years, so it happens. But I'm still holding out hope for him.
All right, no more softball questions. I got a tough question for you.
Bring it, Ace. Bring it.
All right, we're very excited. Knicks are a 500 team, but if you drill down a little bit, 16 of the 21 wins have been versus sub 500 teams. The second half schedule gets a lot more difficult. And if you look at the East, if you look at the hierarchy, there's a clear gap between the top three, Brooklyn, Philly, and Milwaukee, and the rest are kind of all bunched together. So what do you do if you're in the Knicks position? Do you give the young guys more playing time and let the chips fall where they may, or do you make a push for the playoffs? And is that experience, more valuable than the playing time of the young kids?
Yeah, I think if you say, let the kids play and let the chips fall where they may, that to me is tanking. I don't think we're in that position anymore. The time to tank is over. It'd be, if we could have a top 5 pick this year, that'd be great. But I think already, we're in a position where that's, we're probably beyond that in terms of being in the lottery. And I think there's great value in having these young guys learn how to win and learn to see, even younger guys that aren't really getting the minutes they want, like Obi, or if IQ is not getting as many minutes as we all think he deserves, you know what? There's value in him getting limited minutes, but also seeing how Derrick Rose plays on the floor, seeing, what he has to do to overtake those veterans and take their jobs. Any Knick fan that wants to see Kevin Knox or wants to see Frank Ntilikina or wants to see Obi Toppin has to recognize that, in practice, Tibbs is seeing those guys go up against the vets, and he thinks the veterans have a better shot, give him a better shot of winning.
Well, let me throw a couple of names at you. I guess my point really is, would you give up either draft capital or, or money to improve the team. So for instance, they are a little bit deficient on 3-point shooting. Would you go after a JJ Redick? They could use a point guard. Would you go after Oladipo if he became available? They could use another big with Mitch out. Would you go after Drummond if he became available?
I probably wouldn't do Drummond. I think because Mitchell Robinson seems like he's about to come back, and I really like him. I think he has the potential to be an all-world defender. I like that rotation with Robinson and Noel. I'm not sure about Oladipo in terms of his health. That kind of scares me a little bit. I wouldn't give up much for him. Plus, he's a free agent. And most people seem to think that he wants to go to Miami. So, I certainly wouldn't give up a lot for a guy that's not going to stay. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure I want to shake up the core to begin with. I kind of think they have a lot of cap room. I'd be happy to let them, sign some free agents in the offseason. But, they have 2 first-round draft picks, one thanks to Dallas in the Porzingis trade. They also have Detroit's 2nd-round pick, which is going to be like the 1st or 2nd pick in the 2nd round. So that's like a late 1st. So they have the potential to add some young guys, get some shooting maybe. Maybe you stumble into, another IQ or something like that where you get a steal of the draft. I don't know if I want to empty all of our assets on, on bringing in one player. I think we've been down that road before.
Okay, fair enough. But I happen to know there's one guy that did catch your eye, and he's going to be a restricted free agent from the Pelicans. His name is Lonzo Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think he would help them, and what would it take to get him?
I'm interested in Lonzo. I really am. I think he's a good playmaker. He's got size. This year especially, his shooting has come on. Even last year a little bit too. It wasn't great at the end of the year, but he was good in the beginning of the year. And I think he defends well. I think he sort of would slot right in as a perfect sort of complementary piece to what we already have on the roster. Now, he's a restricted free agent too, so I'm not so interested in giving up a lot to trade for him. I'd like to maybe sign him to an offer sheet and see if we could give him enough money that the Pelicans don't want to match it.
And we always ask you this, if we get lucky, now we have the good coach. Now we have young players. We got, draft capital. We got cap room. Who can we get to come here? I mean, pie in the sky, a Kawhi, the Greek Freak, Karl Anthony Towns.
The answer is who knows, because in this league, just since the start of last season, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, we know they all left their teams and came to the Nets.
Get to that.
But so did Anthony Davis left his team and went to the Lakers. Kawhi and Paul George ended up on the Clippers, right? Guys move around all the time. Jimmy Butler changed teams.
But they don't seem to come here is the point.
Well, you know what? We've been a dumpster fire until now. So maybe that'll change. And you know what? But if it doesn't, I think eventually somebody will. And in the meantime, I like the idea. Just keep building on what we have. We have the lowest scoring defense in the league. That you can win games that way, right? And I think if we just add a few more offensive pieces without taking away from the defense, we really have something.
Guys.
Final question I want to ask him. Greg, we know our crosstown rivals are red hot, and yet you're pure Knicks. If, let's say, the Nets made the finals against the Lakers, could you bring yourself to root for them?
No. I could not root for them. I will say about the Nets, I have to admit they look incredible.
They really do.
My only little wet blanket would be to say I have to see all 3 of those guys healthy and on the floor at the same time through 4 rounds of the playoffs. I got to see it to believe it.
All right.
But they look incredible. I have to admit.
They really do.
Guys, I just noticed when I was watching, speaking of the Nets, Anthony, as you mentioned, when I was watching that Net game, that was fun to watch. And I was thinking of a couple of things. Very, very proud of where the Knicks have evolved to quickly. And I'm going to be optimistic. I think they can and will, right with it, what they've built already in such a short time, they'll be able to bring in a superstar player. I really believe that already. And Greg,
I
you
think
know what
so.
was just amazing while I was watching that game? It's a shame that, let's say, Tibbs wasn't in his second year, because they've established themselves so quickly. And when I was watching that net game, and I'm watching James Harden, I knew he was great. I did not know how great. And Greg, just stop and think about this for a second and dream on this for a second. Could you imagine if the Knicks had traded for him? Just take him
Mind-boggling.
and just put him on the Knicks team without making any other moves.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it would be an offensive revelation, that's for sure.
One thing you would notice, because I know you love RJ Barrett, and obviously Randall's fantastic. And when you look at Harden, you'd have three lefties, which would drive the defense crazy, because everybody thinks you're going right. But we want to just say, it's so good to have the Knicks back. And Greg, you always bring the passion. We love having you on. And what we're going to be very optimistic and say, we're going to have you back on real soon to talk playoff Knicks basketball. How does that sound?
I love it. God willing.
That's it. God willing.
That's it. That's the phrase.
Okay. See you soon, Greg.
All right,
All right,
buddy.
guys.
Great job.
Thank you,
All right. Bye-bye.
Anthony. I mean, that was the thought that was going through my mind when I'm watching that game. I'm saying, could you imagine if the Knicks had traded for Harden? I'm like, this guy is incredible. And that's really all they would have. I mean, they could have been a contender right now.
He sacrifices his game, Mike. I mean, he could go off for 40 or 50 every. I've seen games where he score 2 points, and he'd have 18 assists. He does whatever it takes. He's amazing.
Anthony, it's great to see. We're going to shift gears if we can. It's such an exciting time of year. You're going to be talking about March Madness in a little bit. We heard the passion with Knick basketball, and then we're going to welcome in special guest Ira from Staten Island to do some Jets talk. Ira, welcome.
What's up, boys? How are you?
How are you, buddy?
All good. All good.
Ira, I can't keep up. I hope you have a list of all the acquisitions.
Yeah, I got a list of a bunch of level 3 and a level 2 players. I got a bunch of backup on my list. They just signed a tight end a little while ago.
I didn't hear that one.
Yeah, they got some Tyler Croft from the Buffalo Bills.
Okay.
He's a third string tight end. You know what? I think if Mike put on a couple of more pounds, it would have been a signing.
Yeah, wouldn't go that far. But you know what, Ira, Corey Davis, let's just go down a little bit. Were you happy with that wide receiver?
Yes, that's the guy I was targeting. I thought
That was a good move.
Yes,
That
yes.
was a good move.
6'3" receiver for a West Coast system. Good move.
Ira, I have to say, because we hear you on the radio all the time. We hear you on
I've got it all
WFAN,
figured.
not as much as we used to, but we hear you on WFAN and ESPN also. And I have to say, but not only Corey Davis, but Carl Lawson, you were talking
another
about
good
him
one.
3 weeks ago.
I
have
just
to give you kudos. You were kind of playing GM there.
thank you. I just, it's a lot less complicated than people have it make out to be. I mean, you know what Douglas is going to do. Now, this is his second free agent class. And you know what? He's following his footsteps from last year. He's not going to go in for the big bucks, which is fine, because spending a lot of money in the past hasn't worked out for the Jets. I understand that. Lawson and Davis, he did spend decent money, and they're going to be productive. The rest are just filling guys. If they took any one of the three of us, it'd be the same thing.
Hey, Ira, I'm sure you saw that clip with that Justin Hardy when he said, you got to have heart. Now I'm going out there for my mother, and I don't want to disappoint her.
Actually, he may turn out to be the best signing of them all.
Wow, that guy has such passion.
Yes, good special teams player.
Yeah, excellent pickup.
Ira,
they're all young. That's what I liked about Lawson and Davis. They're all 26 years old, right?
Exactly. That's what he went for.
Hunter Henry, I was really disappointed we didn't sign him.
Well, I wanted him. We spoke about it.
Yeah.
Very disappointed. Listen, to me, for them signing Croft as the third tight end, that means they're rolling the dice with Herndon and Ryan Griffin next year. Now, listen, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I still think Herndon has some potential. Maybe this new staff will get the best out of him. Ryan Griffin, he came off an ankle injury last year. And going into the season, he even said that he'll never be the player that he was before. So I just don't understand it. Actually, quite honestly, except for Lawson and Davis, to me, it's been a so-so free agent class. I give them like a grade C. I'm really not that impressed, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
What
Hey,
about the other?
I have a question. I might have missed it. Did we franchise tag Marcus May?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Did-
Justin Simmons, who also got tagged by the Broncos, got a long-term deal today.
He got a fabulous deal.
Well, yeah, but he only really got about 12 guaranteed or 11 guaranteed. And now Marcus May will probably come into play now because now the bar is set. But one thing, and I spoke to Mike about this, something that I kind of, my antennas are up. It's head scratching when a new coach comes to a team and yet not one of his players from his previous team, and the 49ers had 40 free agents.
I was going to ask you that.
Right. That's something that maybe I'm being paranoid. I think that's something worth watching. Because that bothers me.
Or they know we're not, they want to win, and we're not in such great position to win.
Yeah, but if they love the coach, if the money's right, they'll come over. So it's something to watch.
Especially on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah.
Yes.
We didn't even get Sherman, right?
Yeah, but you could get him in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month from now. Who knows?
He's still out there, right?
Yeah, nobody's knocking the door down for him. End of the day, they'll probably get him.
I was thinking Tevin Coleman, the running back.
Yeah, all three running backs were available.
Right.
They didn't touch them. They haven't re-signed Brian Poole. Meanwhile, Kawan Williams, who's also a slot corner, is sitting out. He came from San Francisco. He's sitting out there, and Saleh spoke glowingly of him. He's still out. They didn't sign him. And also another thing, 2 defensive linemen, pass rushers, one signed with San Francisco and one left and signed somewhere else. The Jets didn't even make a play. So to me, like I said, it's something worthwhile watching.
Yeah. Let's talk about Sam. What do you? I really think we overplayed our hand. They were holding out for a number one. It didn't happen, and now the market is shrinking.
Right. I think Douglas was dreaming if he could get a 1. Maybe I'll eat my words. I don't even know if you get a 2 right now.
Right.
But you know what? I've completely reversed gears on this thing because of the Deshaun Watson situation that's playing out right now.
Yeah.
I think that number 2 pick is worth gold. And I think Douglas will not be able to help himself. And rightfully so. If he could turn that pick into 4 or 5 picks, I think that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to bring Sam back. And I think at this time next year, God willing, we'll be in studio. We'll be talking about a Jet team that went 6-11 because it's going to be 17 games. And where are we getting our quarterback? Sam will play better. He'll look middle of the pack. But at the end of the day, they're never going to reach a championship with a middle of the pack quarterback.
But so if Houston wants that pick, what about, to trade for Watson?
I'm not touching Watson with a tie. Whether he's guilty or not guilty, I'm not going near it right now.
Well,
can't do it.
That's you, but I don't know. Do you think they feel that way?
The Jets?
Yeah.
I think they bailed out on Watson a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
Yep.
Because now you would figure the price going to drop a little bit, no?
I think they'll watch it, but I don't think any way in the world, if any of this is true, if they bring him in and sign him, then they get a 4 or 5 game, a 6 game suspension, whatever. The Jets are not going down that road.
Not going there?
I'd be stunned. I mean, personally, if I was a general manager, I wouldn't go near it.
So
Yeah, my gut feeling is they won't touch him.
Yeah. Then where would they go in the draft? What do you think their first option would be? Receiver?
Well, it's very obvious he didn't address the offensive line in free agency.
Take that kid from Oregon?
I don't know. I mean, it depends where they would, if they were to trade down. Because if they keep Sam, which I think now they will, I don't think there's any way in the world he ever makes that pick. That pick is going to get traded. So whether he goes to 4 to Atlanta, goes to Carolina at 8, goes to wherever it might be, they'll probably just take best available player. And at that point, nobody really knows right now.
We better hope that Zach Wilson doesn't turns out to be a bust, right? Or
Well, let me tell you
kicking
something.
ourselves.
So difficult to do this.
We've all lived. They missed out on Brett Favre. They missed out on Dan Marino. Now, I'm not saying Zach Wilson will be anywhere near as good as either one of them, but if they keep Sam and they don't draft Wilson, and this kid turns out to be a star, Douglas will punch his ticket out of town.
Yeah. They're doing a lot of comparisons now. They're saying, like, what if Sam was still in college and, you had to rate, all three, where would, how would it fall out? It's an interesting question.
Well, I actually saw some scouting reports on that. And out of the 3 between, I'm going to take Lawrence out of the equation.
Yeah.
Between Wilson, Fields, and Donald, Donald had the worst grade.
Wow. Yeah. Well, there's a possibility that Denver might want him, Ira.
There's a possibility a couple of teams might want him. I think right now that Doug, listen, once again, I may be wrong, but I think I'm reading this right. I think Douglas sees a pot of gold with that second pick, and he's going to trade it. And quite frankly, if he trades it, whether it's the 4, let's say it's the 8 or 9 or whatever it might be, you may be talking about 4 or 5 picks, and that's hard to turn down. In defense of his decision, I don't want Sam back, but I think that's when you're weighing it on a scale, those picks are going to be worth something.
LaMarcus Joyner, did they bring him in as a backup, or do you think as a safety he'll get playing time?
I think he's going to start with May, but also Saleh plays a lot of 3 safeties, so I think Ashton Davis will have a role. Like I said, I hate to keep on sound so pessimistic about this, but I'm being realistic here. Ashton Davis didn't impress me last year. Maybe Saleh will get the best out of him, but to me, he looked like a special teams player at best.
That other kid, Jared Davis?
He had a couple of good years early on, and then Patricia came in. He did have a decent year his first year with Patricia, then he kind of worked his way into the doghouse. He did have injury problems. I think it's worth the roll of the dice. They need linebackers. Let's face it. I mean, the only one right now. I mean, they let Hewitt walk. They let Frankie Louisville walk. They let Harvey Lange walk. Blake Cash. They don't have any linebackers on the roster.
Especially if they're going to play a 4-3.
It's mind-boggling. Really mind-boggling. But listen, I'm sure Joe Douglas has a plan. It's going to unveil itself. But let me tell you, 6-11 and Sam not becoming a top 10 quarterback is not a good look for a general manager.
Anthony, what was going through your mind when Juju Smith-Schuster went 1 year, $8 million back to Pittsburgh?
What was going through my mind? Damn, that's what was going through my mind.
Right.
I wanted it.
Yeah, that wasn't that surprising, but
yeah. He got less than what the market we thought he was going to go for.
Yeah,
he got like 8 million, right?
1 year, yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised at the price. Quite frankly, I was okay with him not coming to the Jets because I like Crowder a lot, and if they signed him, Crowder would have been gone.
Yeah.
So,
Where
true.
Is Galladay going to end up?
Ooh.
Whoa, at $18 million, I have no idea.
That's a big fish right there. That's the big fish.
Giants? Ira, crosstown Giants?
Yeah,
They want him.
I don't know if that may be a little too rich for. I wouldn't pay $18 million for receiver. Last year they showed you in the draft. Look at all the receivers that came out. And you got the same thing this year. I'm not paying $18 million for a receiver.
Supposedly the Bears want him and keep Allen Robinson. That's not too shabby.
No, that's great. But who's throwing the ball?
Dalton?
Dalton. They
it's
can't have
not
everything.
happening. Well, you know what? The Jets don't have a bad receiving core right now. You got Mims,
Oh.
Crowder, and Corey Davis.
I think it
And now
stretched the field a little bit.
and the guy Cole from Jacksonville. That's not bad. That's a pretty good group that Douglas put together.
Right. Well, one trend I did notice, a lot of these guys are settling for 1-year deals, Ira.
Well, you know what? I think that's Douglas's way. He did it last year, and he's doing
No, I
it
mean,
again.
overall, in the NFL, overall.
That's because there's going to be a lot more money.
Money
The
next
pot's
year.
going to be a lot bigger next year.
That's right. So probably a lot of guys, that's what they want to do. They really don't want to lock in long term. The owners are gonna. I think that contract, if I read it right, that's worth $10 billion more next year, which is just they just print money in that league. It's unbelievable. The Thursday night package went to Amazon Prime. So
Oh yeah, I saw that.
right. So unless it's a local game, either the Giants or Jets are playing, unless you have Amazon, you're not watching Thursday night football anymore. So
That's the way of the future here.
yeah, that's the way it is. It's fine by me.
I think ESPN also has a package, a piece of it or something.
Oh, do they really? Okay.
Yeah, I think I saw that too.
It's crazy.
So now, what are they saying about fans in the stands? As far, or at least at the beginning, is what percentage?
Well, I don't know if I know New York, because of the Yankees and Mets, they're up to 20%. I don't know if Jersey has come out with anything yet. If we're in April and they're talking 20%, you would hope, God willing, in August, maybe it'll be 40% if things go the way they're going. So I think by September, I think realistically, you may get 50%.
Maybe half full.
Yeah, I think so.
So how does that affect you?
Well, thank God I was vaccinated, and as long
Well, I mean, how do they work it out with the season, with the tickets?
I have no idea, but I know one thing. I
Like
started
a
paying,
random.
I hope not. I just started paying my bill, so we'll see how it works.
They didn't come
Ira,
out with the schedule yet, right?
No, they're not doing it to the end of May.
Oh, all right.
so, Ira, we thank you. We'll see you on the next episode and all. But, I just want to just mention one thing. We had Gregg on. We were talking Knicks basketball. Had you on, and we're talking Jets. And the time absolutely flies by. It feels like we were talking to you for only 1 minute. I have to ask you and my brother a question. Is it just me, or are you noticing that sports talk in New York is just getting, the bar is lower and lower and lower. And I'll tell you, just from my perspective, I don't even listen anymore. And Ira, I know you were very close with Joe Benigno, and he retired. Mike Francesa retired. And now that we have the likes of Craig Carton in the afternoon, I'll be honest with you, I don't find anyone on the radio must listen.
Well,
They very rarely talk sports.
no, I'm with you. I like DCR show early in the morning. And then basically, I'll put Maggie and Moose on, but if they're not talking football, I shut it off.
Okay.
And then the radio stays off until 3 o'clock, because WFAN from 2 to 7, I can't listen to that nonsense.
Yeah.
And then I'll put on Michael K. And if they're talking football, I leave it on. If not, I shut it off. The best of the weekends, because it's like old time sports. JJ has a good show at night on WFAN. Chris Collin has a good show on ESPN. But, during the, mid mornings and afternoons, I'm listening to music for the most part.
I'm in Florida, Ira, and so through radio.com, I usually put on, Boomer and Geo in the morning, and just to get caught up, and I'm waiting, and other than the updates where they give a few scores, they talk about what they're gonna have for breakfast and who's the handsomest guy. Like, where's the sports?
Because you know what, I think the younger generation and everything, I think the sports talk radio is becoming more like overall entertainment and not hardcore sports.
Yeah,
And I think
that's
it's sad. It's really sad. I mean, the show that you and Mike do, It's like the old times, but it's sports. You know what they do on the radio is shtick. I wish you guys were on. I wish you were on from 2 to 7 and you would have something to listen to.
They talk about their softball team and everything but
cares?
sports.
Do I care what they had for breakfast or what they're doing on the weekend? I mean, I know all of them. Everybody's nice. They're all talented, but they're going down a road that's not entertainment for me. It's you know.
Nobody breaks Jet Talk down better than Ira from Staten Island. Ira, thank you for taking a few minutes with us. We'll see you on the next episode.
Sounds good.
Let's get a few more guys signed. All right.
I hope so. Stay healthy.
Thank you.
All
Ira.
right.
Anthony.
Also, Mike, what you were saying, it's funny how the seasons blend now. There is no more, football season is this date today. Everything is all year round,
But you know what? And that's why I brought up the point about Sport Talk. It's such a shame because now with everything going on, I mean, just like we just said, the Knicks are relevant, and you got Jets, Giants. You got Yankees, Mets, March Madness. How could you not find time to not talk?
Right, and people are cooped up. Right, to me, I'm like starved for information or anything that's like sounds interesting, and it's very tough to get.
It really is amazing, and just like we're going to shift gears again. You always do a great job breaking down March Madness, so let's just jump right in.
Yeah. You know what I want to do, Mike, to start? I want to say how truly amazing, sometimes we take it for granted and what's going on in this COVID environment, how they came up with the system to even play this tournament. I mean, there was no way they could do it the old way with, all the different venues and whatnot. So, they came up with this system that all games are going to be played in Indiana, mostly in Indianapolis. And the reason that the schedule is a little bit off, it's actually started, we're taping on a Friday. It usually starts on a Thursday. What they did with these kids, they made them quarantine and self-isolate for 7 straight days. And they had to come up with, 7 negative COVID tests in those 7 days in order to be admitted into the inner circle. So you can imagine these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids sitting in a hotel room for 7 days. I mean, that's truly amazing. And then, in order, if something, God forbid, should happen, they're wearing these tracking devices, so it'll make it easier to do contact tracing and, with the sanitizing. So, I mean, the effort has really been unbelievable just to get the thing rolling. So I want to give kudos to, last year, unfortunately, those kids missed out on the opportunity, and it was probably a little touch and go this year, but let's hope that they could get through it because, as we always say, it's for the kids. There's nothing like, seeing the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat etched in their faces.
And as you set it up so perfectly, even though it is difficult for them, for the process for 7 days and all of that, it'll be great because you would never want to see that tournament get interrupted once it gets rolling because there's nothing like it. It started already. Anthony, fill us in.
Right. So let's go through a couple of things, and I'm not going to go too much into each team or each bracket because by the time this airs, it's going to be half over already. But a couple of interesting things, Mike. The Blue Bloods, they're not around this year. Did you notice that? No Duke, no Kentucky. Michigan State has to go into a play-in game and they lose. So they're not around. So different field this year. What I also wanted to talk about, remember last year, Sister Jean?
Yeah.
From Loyola of Chicago. Oh, she's about 100 years old. She's still around.
Really?
And guess what? They're at it again. They won today. Loyola of Chicago won their first round. It wasn't an upset. It was the 8-9 game, but they were a great story last year. It'll be interesting to see if they could go a couple of rounds again this year. The camera's always on her,
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So, Mike, I want you to complete this phrase for me. Give me liberty or
Death.
right, that would be the difficult. I was all set to pick Liberty as one of my Cinderellas, The only thing is they run into Oak State, which is one of the solid favorites in the 4-13 game. And that game is taking place right now, Mike. And at halftime, actually, Liberty was leading. If you want to take a sneak peek at your phone, we might have the answer. But they are tough. Oak State was supposed to be one of the real favorites of this tournament. So kudos to them. Even if they fall a little bit short, they're going to be in it to the wire. The next thing I wanted to talk about is some of the locals. A great story. We got Rick Pitino back in the tournament. He's with Iona. Unfortunately, probably by the time this airs, because they run into Alabama in the first round, and unless he's more of a genius than I even think he is, they don't have the horses to keep up with Alabama.
But we'll give him credit just to get there. I mean, it's
Yes,
amazing.
absolutely.
He's amazing.
He is. He's a great recruiter.
All-time great coach. Yeah.
Yeah. Another kind of cool story this year was Georgetown. They came out of nowhere. They would not have made the tournament. Led by Patrick Ewing is the coach now. They almost didn't let him into the Gardens. You see that?
Does he have his ID? Does he have his ID?
He got all upset.
You look familiar.
The security guard said, well, he had his mask on and his line is a little different these days. But they didn't recognize him. So they don't have much of a chance. Like I said, they wouldn't have made it if it wasn't the fact that they won the tournament, but they're in it. I think one of the two stories to keep an eye on, Rutgers, Mike. Rutgers is in it, and they have a pretty good team. They could go for a round or two. In fact, they're on later tonight, Friday, as we tape. I'm gonna check that game out. Rutgers Clemson. That should be a good game.
Good one.
And another team that has a large following in this area is UConn. They have kind of a tough game with Maryland, but they're tough. And we always kind of like Villanova is a fan of the shit. We're a fan of his and the team. They're not.
Right.
They made it, but they have some COVID issues. They have some injuries, and it's not one of his better teams this year. So I wouldn't look for a long run from him.
Mhm.
Couple of other things. So the way I enter a pool. I know you don't. So I'm looking for an angle to kind of separate myself from the masses. So there's two things. We'll see if I'm right, that I'm taking a hunch on to eliminate two of the big teams. One of my key games is North Carolina. If they get by Wisconsin in the first round, they go up against Baylor. The reason I like that matchup, North Carolina has a huge front line, Mike. And the one thing about Baylor, they're good defensively. They swarm, but they are small. It's very small up front. So that is not a good matchup for them. So one of Ace's upsets is number 8, North Carolina, to knock off the top seed Baylor.
Wow.
We'll see if that one happens. The other one I like, and you might like this one a little better, and some people in your circles might like this. LSU, they have a very potent offense. And if they could get by St. Bonaventure in their opening round, that's the 8-9 game, they should get by the Bonnies. They go up against Michigan. Michigan has an awesome team, but one of their key guys, his name is Livers, is injured. They expect, or they hope, that he'll be back later on in the tournament. I'm thinking they don't get later on in the tournament because they get outgunned by LSU. So I'm picking number 8 LSU to defeat Michigan.
I'm going to let Alan Olson and Tim Olson know that the show is over.
So you know what, Mike? Every year I look at Gonzaga and I say, boy, nice team, but I don't know. They're not, not as battle tested as the ACC, the Big Ten type teams. They tend to shy away from them, and rightly so, because and they've always kind of underachieved when it comes to the tournament. I think they're going to do it this year. They have so much firepower, such a well-rounded team. And in their Western bracket, they're going to pretty much walk through. Not too much competition. You know, Iowa is pretty good, but I think they get to the Final Four. I think Illinois gets to the Final Four. The other two teams I like are Arkansas and Alabama. So my Final Four is Gonzaga, Alabama, Arkansas, and Illinois. I have Gonzaga and Illinois in the finals, and I have the Zags cutting down the Nets.
Oh, all right.
So the last thing I just wanted to mention, a couple of names that you're going to hear a lot about throughout the tournament. And one, let's hope if they survive, maybe by now if they did, Oak State, Cade Cunningham, whether he survives or not, you're going to see him at the next level. He's a 6'8" point guard. He's a fabulous player. He's a freshman, Mike. I believe he's coming out. I don't know if I saw that yet in the paper or whatever. So you're certainly going to hear a lot about him. I think the second biggest name is on Iowa. The center, Luke Garza. He's a terrific player. He's 6'11". He's the mainstay on Iowa. Another name you're going to hear a lot, the Baylor point guard, probably the second best point guard in the tournament. His name is Jarrett Butler. And on Gonzaga, there's two names two guys that really carried them, Jalen Suggs and Corey Kispert. Those are the names you're going to hear most about throughout the tournament. As usual, I mean, just on day one, it started already. The things, you're scratching your head. How did that happen? There already were 2 overtime games. That ball goes up at the last second. Survive in advance. If it goes in, you go on. If it bounces out, you go home. It's just, there's nothing like it. And, it's going to be a terrific tournament once again this year.
Well done, Ace. Well done. And we'll all be watching. We'll all be, following along, whether it's for brackets, whether it's for, people that
Just
wager.
pure entertainment.
Just no matter how you're viewing March Madness, it never disappoints. That's the bottom line.
Right.
It never disappoints. It starts from the play-in game and it goes up until somebody's cutting down the nets. And the beauty is you never have to worry about, like, we see World Series that are duds.
Right.
We definitely see Super Bowls that are duds, but there's never, an NCAA basketball tournament that's a dud. It's not possible.
Because the first couple of rounds, you have the ability to switch around. And they always go to the game that's going to be a white knuckler, go right down to the end.
Right.
And so that's the game you focus on. You go, oh, wow, that's unbelievable.
It really is. It really
So
is.
it's a lot of fun.
Enjoy it. We'll be following along with you, and on the next
Absolutely.
episode, you could reflect on it, and we'll enjoy that. We'll shift.
We got
gears.
one more sport to go.
We got one more to go. We got baseball. We've talked about, and I know you mentioned with the brackets and all of that, and everybody enjoys that. One thing that people enjoy, very much when it comes to baseball is they take a peek at Las Vegas. They take a look at the over-unders, look at the not only the odds of going all the way, but how teams rank against each other. Anthony?
Yeah, I wanted to start with the team I root for the most, and that's the Mets. And they were targeted with 90 wins. And I got to say, as much as I'm optimistic about the team, I like a lot of how they look. I think they're going to come a little short of expectations. And my main point in saying that is the defense. I know that's something you hold in high regard, and they have everyday players that just don't fit. I mean, they have, Dominic Smith in left field, and you can't take his bat out of the lineup. They're playing, J.D. Davis at third, and Brandon Nimmo in center field. Now, they're going to mix and match. You'll see a little Pilar, you'll see a little Villar, around the infield. I like this kid, Guilherme. He's good. He's good with the glove. Doesn't hit much. But I don't know if they could hit 90. I mean, that's one of those things where everything has to go right. And having said that, I don't know. There's nothing that they could do right now. They're just going to have to hope that defense, doesn't cost them too much. So that's one thing. A couple other ones that jumped out at me. They had the Boston Red Sox with 80 wins. I don't see them as a 500 team. I think, they got rid of their whole outfield. Remember they had the Killer B outfield with, Bradley, Benintendi, and Betts. They're all gone. And they have no pitching. They have a few decent players and Devers and the shortstop, but I don't know. I don't see them as a 500 team. The Yanks, Tampa, and Toronto are really tough. A feast on the Orioles, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to get to 500. But that one thing jumped, and also I thought Houston was a little bit high. I don't know. I think they take a step back this year. There's no Springer, right? The pitching, I think, starting to be a question mark. Verlander's starting to be a question mark. And they have them for 86 wins. That sounded a little high. The other one I was looking at is the Padres. Well, they got the Dodgers at 103, which is probably low.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And then San Diego at 95. And my only thing is, Mike, prove it. It's hard, to make that next level jump. When the team is building and you're on the right. But now when the pressure is on and everybody's considering you, a winner, a playoff team, you got to go out there and do it day in and day out. 95 is a pretty high number, and those guys haven't been through this. So I'm not saying that they can't do it. I like the team, but I think that's, again, everything's going to have to go right.
We want to take a moment to mention the passing of Gregory Perillo. He was a legend. He was a world-renowned artist. He was a passionate Yankee fan, and we're proud to say that he was a friend of the show. We had him on a number of times.
Fascinating guy.
We will deeply miss him, and we regret to hear that news, and we pass along our condolences, to Mary, to his beautiful wife Mary, and the entire family. So once again, see you next time, God willing.
God willing.